Okay, this is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. It's something that I've been looking into for a long time because it just fascinates me. But I don't think I've ever put the disclaimer out there that I should, which is, I'm not a scientist. I don't have a PhD in any of these subjects. So while it might fascinate me, and I have certain intuitive deductions that I'm making about what this all means, ultimately I'm too dumb to understand the science of it all. And if someone actually put the question to me, hey, can you explain this in mathematical formulas and give us the reasoning behind it, I would fail miserably in that task. I can't do anything like that, so again, I am a novice paying attention to this as a hobby. Just in case there are any actual scientists that come across this video, it's not like they would need to have me explain that, but I'm at least acknowledging it right up front, just so you know. So anyway, there was this new paper that came out from Chinese researchers in 2023, Recent Advances and Challenges in Schumann Resonance Observations and Research. And before getting into this paper, there's probably people listening to this who don't know what I'm talking about when I reference the Schumann resonance. So first, I'm going to read a little bit about what it is and just give you some background. And simultaneously, we can debunk one of the elementary narratives that is promoted out there on all kinds of sites all over the internet. We have had numerous inquiries regarding postings on Facebook that refer to information on a website suggesting that for the first time in recorded history, the Schumann resonance frequency has jumped from 7.8 to 36 plus hertz. These statements are inaccurate. Here are some basics about the source of the Schumann resonances. There is an electromagnetic cavity which acts as a waveguide which exists between the surface of the Earth and the inner edge of the ionosphere, which is about 55 kilometers from the Earth's surface. The Schumann resonances are quasi-standing electromagnetic waves that exist in this cavity. They occur at the following frequencies, which are determined by the size of the Earth ionosphere cavity: 7.8, 14, 20, 26, 33, 39, 45, and 59 hertz, with a daily day-night variation of about plus or minus 0.5 hertz. So long as the properties of Earth's electromagnetic cavity remains about the same, these frequencies remain the same as well. The resonant properties of this electromagnetic cavity and the resulting resonant frequencies were first predicted by the German physicist W.O. Schumann in 1952 and were experimentally verified in the late 1950s and early 1960s. There are and always have been 8 different Schumann resonance frequencies. They are the same as they were when first measured in the 1960s. If the resonant frequencies were changing, it would mean the physical geometry of the Earth ionosphere cavity was changing. The frequencies can and do change temporarily due to solar storm events, etc., which affects ionosphere shape and conditions, but they return to their base frequencies when things settle down. This is a very important distinction that is being made here because, as I said, you will hear people say all the time that the Schumann resonance is going crazy. It's changed. And in New Age circles, this means that the frequency of the planet is shifting into a different dimension, right? But very clearly here, based on the actual science of it, the shape of the Earth itself would have to change in order for the Schumann resonance, or the frequencies that make up the Schumann resonance, to change. Because they are a product of the distance between the surface of the Earth and the ionosphere itself. Meaning, the actual ionosphere would have to shift in a direction up or a direction down so that the cavity space between the surface of the Earth and that layer of the atmosphere was different, which would give you a different frequency. As they say here, this can happen temporarily in solar storms where the energy from the sun directly impacts the magnetosphere and causes fluctuations in the actual cavity between the magnetosphere and the surface of the Earth, which then changes the frequencies temporarily, but they always return to their base level. Now, moving on, obviously, as soon as this became well-known information, other scientists started to ask questions based on the existence of these standing waves. One of which was a scientist named Herbert Koenig, who became Schumann's successor at Munich University. Koenig demonstrated a correlation between Schumann resonances and brain rhythms. He compared human EEG recordings with natural electromagnetic fields of the environment in 1979 and found that the main frequency produced by Schumann oscillations is very close to the frequency of alpha brain rhythms. And you can see here the comparison of the waves between the two. These are the EEGs, and these are the actual Schumann resonances. Dr. Koenig carried out further measurements of Schumann resonance and eventually arrived at a frequency of exactly 7.83 Hertz, which is even more interesting as this frequency is one which applies to mammals. For instance, septal driving of the hippocampal rhythm in rats has been found to have a minimum threshold at 7.7 Hertz. This relationship has been explored by a number of investigators. One of the foremost researchers in this field is Dr. Wolfgang Ludwig, who has been investigating Schumann resonance and its place in nature for many years. It was Dr. Ludwig who carried out further measurements whilst writing his thesis on the Schumann resonance. His aim was to measure what kind of natural signals actually exist in a healthy environment. He became aware of the fact that due to man-made electromagnetic signals within the atmosphere, the accurate measurement of Schumann waves was almost impossible in the city. That's a very important point, right? Even in the early days of this kind of experimentation, the scientists were having a great difficulty finding the natural signal because of all the electromagnetic pollution in cities. Which, connect the dots, is that pollution doing something to our bodies? In other words, is it disconnecting us from something that we need in order to function properly? Could that possibly be why life in the city is so crazy compared to the rest of civilization? For this reason, he decided to take measurements out at sea where, due to good electrical conductivity, the Schumann waves are stronger. He then had the idea to take underground measurements in mines. Here he recognized that the magnetic field of the Earth fluctuated too. This was also investigated by Dr. Robert Becker in his book Electricity and Vitality, The Spark of Life. Professor Weaver from the Max Planck Institute for Behavioral Physiology built an underground bunker which completely screened out magnetic fields. Student volunteers lived there for 4 weeks in this hermetically sealed environment. Professor Weaver noted that the students' circadian rhythms diverged and that they suffered emotional distress and migraine headaches. As they were young and healthy, no serious health conditions arose, which would not have been the case with older people or people with a compromised immune system. After only a brief exposure to 7.8 Hertz, the very frequency which had been screened out, the volunteers' health stabilized again. The same complaints were reported by the first astronauts and cosmonauts who, out in space, also were no longer exposed to the Schumann waves. Now modern spacecrafts are said to contain a device which simulates the Schumann waves. Although Schumann resonance could easily be confirmed by measurements at the time of its discovery, it is no longer so obvious due to our atmosphere being filled with man-made radiation noise at different frequencies. This is almost drowning out the natural signals that have been there through eons of evolution. It is possible that these signals act like a natural tuning fork, not just for the biological oscillators of the brain, but for all processes of life. With the advent of new wireless technology, in particular microwaves pulsed at frequencies close to Schumann resonance, as in mobile telephony, another threat is emerging. We may be creating an environment that is literally out of tune with nature itself. And it is at this point that there is an urgent need for us to understand how everything alive responds to the most subtle changes in magnetic and electromagnetic fields surrounding us. For instance, we need to examine the possible interaction between magnetite crystals within cells and man-made magnetic fields in the environment. And yes, this is the question that no one is asking as we just mindlessly assimilate this technology into our lives, with no further questioning of what these frequencies might be doing to our bodies and minds. What effect is all of this electromagnetic pollution having on our physiology? Remembering, of course, that this is a very recent invention, relatively speaking. We barely have one generation that has been born into this electromagnetic pollution. That is cell towers and Wi-Fi. This is probably going to turn out to be one of the greatest scandals of all time. When it is known what these telecommunication companies were aware of as they gave us this technology anyway, because it's part of a larger agenda that is sort of transhuman in nature, all of the negative information about this stuff has been suppressed and ignored because they figure at the end of the day, well, by the time any of the health information is known, we will have merged with machines already, and it won't even matter at that point. The frequencies will be inside of the body. You will have devices that connect you to the network from inside your own cells. And at that point, none of the information about what it's doing to your body will matter because you won't even be a human being at that point anymore anyway. But if the plan doesn't unfold as seamlessly as they hope, this information is going to come out and be very disturbing to the majority of the human population when they find out what this is doing to them. The experiments on this stuff very clearly showed that when you are disconnected from the lowest standing wave of the Schumann resonances, the 7.83 hertz, it has very negative effects on the body. And people lose touch with the natural circadian rhythm of day and night. Which is why before technology and before electricity, which was the original version of this, we all went to sleep when the sun went down and we rose up when the sun came back up. And we were in phase with the natural cycle of the earth, in part because the natural cycle of the earth was resonating at the same frequencies that our brain was. It can transmit information to us through its frequency that we are connected into as a part of it. Which is no different than you communicating with cells in your body, giving your cells information that they need to fix a problem or adjust something that isn't functioning correctly. And in that connection, you can kind of see how when they talk about neurons firing in your brain, and you look into that process, it's very similar to what is going on with the Schumann resonance, which is really caused by lightning in the ionospheric cavity of the Earth. For example, you can go to experiments like this one, the Dynamic Mind. Stunning 3D glass brain shows neurons firing off in real time. And you can go down to this image where they constructed what it would actually look like when your brain and its neurons are firing and giving all of the information to the rest of your body through that process. And when you look at this transpire and watch it and envision the Earth and lightning strikes happening all over the Earth at the same time, it's very similar. And you can see how what is going on in our brain on an electrical level is mirrored by what is going on with the Earth's brain on its scale. And naturally then, as the Schumann experiments prove, those two frequencies, both your brain and the Earth, are connected and flow together in the original design. And when you look at this image and you think about all of this, and then you go to an article like this one, that says AirPod radiation may cause brain damage, leading scientists warns, you look at what they portray here with this wireless AirPod in your ear and communicating via frequencies with all of the devices either on your body or around you. And all that is going on in your brain as this is disrupting those signals and potentially doing damage to your biology that you're not aware of. Hopefully that makes a little more sense now, why a scientist would come to that conclusion when you see the image like this. And then you imagine the AirPods on both sides and the signals that are coming in and interacting with these signals and disrupting your natural biological rhythm. And then place this image in the context of your Wi-Fi and the meters that provide all of that, the power lines and all the electricity and the cell towers and just the whole grid in general, what that's doing to the collection of these brains that are supposed to be getting a natural signal from the Earth's ionosphere cavity. Hopefully that gives you a better idea of the potential disruption that's taking place here. So finally, going back to this new article that was released that spends the beginning summarizing a lot of what I already went into, but in a more refined scientific way. I'll link it so you can read it yourself. I won't read all of it again, but I do want to read this part that speaks directly to what I was just going over. Schumann resonance signals may also affect the physiology, psychology, and behavior of organisms, and organisms are particularly sensitive to changes in low-frequency electromagnetic fields, especially SR signals. The study of SR and biological mechanisms is considered controversial, and it is necessary to identify the mechanisms and pathways of ELF electromagnetic fields affecting biological health, which has not been fully studied so far. Recent studies have shown that weak magnetic fields in the SR band have a certain protective effect on mouse hearts under pressure conditions. Based on statistical methods of epidemiological analysis and contemporaneous SR recordings, researchers found that the power amplitude of SR has an effect on cardiovascular-related diseases in humans. In addition, researchers provided a glossary of terms related to atmospheric electromagnetic biological effects, which is important to facilitate research on this topic. Researchers provided evidence for a link between natural ELF fields and ELF fields found in many organisms, including humans, proposing the notion of direct or indirect coupling of atmospheric electromagnetic systems to organisms. In addition, magnetic field oscillations caused by atmospheric events may have an impact on plant growth and development as well as on plant responses to other environmental factors. Which makes obvious sense as well when we consider the fact that, yes, plants are just as alive and sentient as every other creature, and so they would have a similar relationship, biologically speaking, to the natural frequencies produced by the Earth's atmosphere. Indeed, in the exact same way that you can do this sitting in front of a television and have artificial technology entrain your brainwaves and have them oscillate at a different frequency that it is putting out. If it's possible to do that artificially through a television or a computer or a phone, then surely, yes, they got the idea in the first place from the fact that this is taking place naturally in the environment all around us with our brains and the Earth's natural frequencies. So I got a little sidetracked there. I'll read that again. In addition, magnetic field oscillations caused by atmospheric events may have an impact on plant growth and development as well as on plant responses to other environmental factors. For example, when wheat and peas are exposed to an ELF magnetic field with SR frequency, their photosynthetic responses are affected to varying degrees depending on the plant species and exposure time. And as I've gone into in prior videos, they've done similar experiments with exposing plants to musical frequencies or sound wave vibrations, which is just another form of frequency, not unlike Schumann resonances. And they've shown that certain plants respond to this classical music in a way that they grow much better than they do when exposed to other less beneficial sound wave vibrations. Now, let's get to the whole reason that I brought this paper up, which is the first two paragraphs of this summary. Schumann resonance, as a natural ELF resonance excited by lightning activity in the Earth ionosphere cavity, contains rich geophysical information. In terms of observation methods, it has expanded from traditional ground-based observation to satellite-based observation and has been applied and studied in multiple fields such as lightning, earthquakes, and Earth's climate. It is constantly expanding. Therefore, the in-depth study of SR signals and their changing characteristics based on satellite data has become a development direction in future space geoscience. It is worth noting that the range of sites for ground-based station observation will be gradually limited due to global rapid modernization, diverse industrial activities, and urban environments that cause a variety of ELF interferences, such as radiation from power lines, inductive signals from cell phone communication, leakage currents from grounding industrial objects, etc. We target our research in the field of satellite-based Schumann resonance observations, where these anthropogenic interference signals are expected to be eliminated as background noise in the spectrum of the satellite electromagnetic field. So, I hope you see what they're saying here and how important it is. These Schumann resonance scientists and researchers are openly stating, hey guys, the electromagnetic pollution is getting so bad on the ground of planet Earth that we can't even do our measurements on the ground anymore. We have to totally abandon that going forward and use only satellites to measure these frequencies, or else we're never going to get a natural reading. And do you understand the weight of that in light of everything else that I've gone into? These frequencies are bombarding us so much everywhere that we go that the scientists can't even measure the Schumann resonance anymore. Meaning, what is that doing to our bodies? Is that something we should be concerned about and possibly look into, given the potential health risks of this kind of thing? All kinds of little stories that pop up in the news every couple years about students at a school with a cluster of this illness that just so happens to be right next to a new cell phone tower they put in. The reason that quote-unquote grounding is so powerful is because you're taking your shoes off and standing on the earth, which discharges all of that stored up artificial energy that is polluting your body, and gradually in nature you start to come back into balance with your natural standing wave frequency oscillation. That's why you feel so good when you're out in nature, grounding, quote unquote, and why it reduces inflammation and just helps people in so many different ways. Because that's how you were designed from the beginning to feel. And we just lose touch with that in the artificial modern world where we are constantly in a soup of electromagnetic pollution and constantly have shoes on or are in structures that have no connection to nature whatsoever. In effect, blocking this connection with the earth, which is why we are viewed as something that is detached from the earth. We are viewed as something that is consuming it as opposed to living in harmony with it. Because we're detached from its information stream that informs us how to feel and interact. And when you're detached from that for a long enough period in time, other things can come into your brain and convince you to act in other ways that just become normal. And you don't even think twice about it because you never reconnect and get the information that fixes your disconnection. The best advice that anybody can give you along these lines is put your phone down, close your computer, turn off the TV, take your shoes off, and go stand in the grass or the dirt or the sand, or whatever the case is. Get away from these signals as much as you can and restore the balance in your body. Okay, that's it for this one. Later.